Podcast City Network.
Welcome. This is the Rip Griffin Show podcast, a baseball podcast for baseball fans of all ages. Now, here's your host, Rip Griffin.
Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Rip Griffin Show. This is episode number 77, and I've got a crew of guys with me tonight that's going to talk some baseball. But before I get into that, I want to be sure to remind everybody to subscribe to the show on all the major podcast platforms, Apple, Google, or Spotify. You can leave me a voicemail if you want to call into the show if you have a question about your favorite team. That number is 210-263-3253. So with all that good stuff out of the way, today I am joined by Steven, Ben, and Mac, all from Overtime Heroics. Guys, how's it going?
Doing well. Excited to be back. Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rip.
Absolutely, man. Mac, this is your first time on the show, and I truly appreciate you coming on, and we're going to talk a lot of baseball. Since we're basically a full week into the season now, which is exciting to see. We've got fans back in the stands, which is great. No more fake pumped crowd noise coming in, so that's always a good thing. So with that, we're going to go ahead and dive into the first topic of tonight's show. And one of the big things that came out this week was the All-Star Game. Now, we all know that the All-Star Game was going to be in Atlanta, which seemed very fitting because of the late passing of Hank Aaron. So it would be a very commemorative for that thing to happen there in Atlanta. And all of a sudden, Major League Baseball moved it. They removed the All-Star Game from Atlanta due to some political reasons that we won't really talk much about because we try to keep the politics out of the show. So, but it's due because of the voting issues. We'll say that. But so I want to get your guys' opinion on what you think about this taking place, going from Atlanta to Colorado. And Steve, I'll kind of jump with you first. What are your thoughts on the All-Star Game moving?
Yeah, absolutely. I believe, again, leaving politics aside, this was absolutely the right call to move the All-Star Game. And the reason why I say that is there were reports emerging that players were going to make the decision on their own to not go to the game. So the way that I see it is, as soon as it started coming out that the Players Association was thinking about not attending, certain players were thinking about not attending, it really forced Major League Baseball's hand here. Because, as bad as this is, it would have been so much worse to get into the summer. We're 2 weeks from the game, people are voting, and all of a sudden Mike Trout or Christian Yelich or Mookie Betts isn't going to go. That would have been an absolute disaster for the sport. So I actually, by seeing it moved this early, I'm actually a little, cautiously optimistic that maybe Major League Baseball and the Players Association are actually having a little bit more dialogue and coming to some more agreements behind the scenes than we're realizing. And if that leads us to getting, past the CBA expiration at the end of the season, to be honest, I'm all for it.
Ben, what do you think? Do you think it was a good move for Major League Baseball to move the game, or you think that maybe they should have just left it alone?
It's a tough question. I know I mentioned it in the chat at the time for Overtime Heroics last weekend and got some feedback from some people in the chat that it really wasn't favorable to why I was in favor of it being moved. And I know the political reasons we're not going to discuss. It's different perspective for me, I think, than you guys when you live in Canada and you see this kind of stuff going on in the US and you maybe don't understand the political system and you don't understand the way things work in the state of Georgia, as I don't, right? So I confess my ignorance. But for those reasons to move it and then see the positive reception that's happened as a result of that move, and hey, it's Coors Field, so maybe we'll see a bunch more home runs, right?
Right.
Right. I mean, you always try to look at the positives, and people say keep politics out of sports, but how do you do it when you look at last season and you look at COVID and you look at the Black Lives Matter movement and you look at the stuff that emerged when the season started with the Black Lives Matter stuff, right? Infused into Major League Baseball. So I don't see how you can't when the All-Star game comes around and it's in a place like Atlanta, and that comes up, how you can really avoid that.
Yeah, it's interesting that
it's different for me, and I say that in the nicest possible way. As a Canadian, then you guys living in the U.S., right? I mean, politically it's different, right? And it's just, I sort of see it as an observer outside of the situation.
Right. That's a good point. I mean, it's
substantially different in Canada, right?
Right.
And it's one of those things where you're like, okay, like how does this work? Why is this happening?
Yeah, it's hard to take the politics out of the sport because at some shape, form, or fashion, it's going to work its way in. So
of course, and
yeah, so
it's tough.
Yeah,
it's tough.
It really is. So Mac, let me ask you: do you think? I guess we'll kind of just keep the same question. I mean, what are your thoughts on the All-Star game movie?
Yeah, obviously, I'm not going to get into the political stuff about it, but from what I heard, it wasn't just that the players were going to boycott the game. I heard that also sponsorships were going to be removed if they kept it in Atlanta. So I saw the Braves released a statement explaining how disappointed they were, and I can't blame them. I mean, the Braves themselves didn't do anything wrong or didn't do anything that affected the decision necessarily, but it was going to be in the state of Georgia, which there is controversy going on there. So I completely understand why they moved it. They're going to be moving it to Colorado, which I think is going to be very entertaining. I personally thought they were going to move it somewhere else. I know that they want to honor the late Hank Aaron, so I thought maybe Milwaukee, but they're moving it to Colorado, which I think is going to be it's going to be very fun. I think, especially the home run derby. I know that for myself, my sister lives a walking distance from Coors Field, so that's going to be, Denver's going to be popping and everything. I look forward to it. I do understand where the Braves are coming from and why they're disappointed, but I still think that the All-Star Week will be plenty of fun.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
So.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think it's going to be great, but it's tough.
Yeah, definitely. One of the things that kind of concerned me was like you mentioned, Mac, it's not the Braves' fault. It's not they're doing because of what's happening within their state. I still think that they at least should have maybe tried to figure out a way to kind of make it work instead of just automatically pulling the plug and saying this is what's going to be. Now we don't know exactly what all kind of transpired between the communication between the team and the league and whatnot. So, but like you mentioned, Mac, there was a couple other places that they may have wanted to put the All-Star game. Milwaukee was one of those places because it was fitting. That's where Hank Aaron got his career started. A couple other places. Of course, I'm from Texas, so I'm biased to the fact that I would love to have it in Texas. Because we got two stadiums that could easily house it in two big markets. But one of the places that I really liked that I wanted to see it is back in Omaha at the College World Series venue. I know I brought that up in the chat, and I think somebody had posted about something, with the College World Series would probably be just wrapping up. But it would be fitting because you've got, the stars of tomorrow and the stars of today, and you can kind of market that to kind of boost some of that revenue and kind of bring more fans into the sport, because that's what baseball needs. They need to be able to bring more in and to make it more appealing to the fans. And I don't know, I've never been to Omaha, but I always hear it's an electric venue at that time of year in the College World Series. So that's kind of one of the things that I thought might make it more fun, or even the Field of Dreams. I mean, I know there's going to be a game here pretty soon, but that would be kind of fun. You can't have a whole lot of people there, but I mean, nothing better than backyard baseball.
Yeah, we could even go a step further. Maybe they should do a trip to Williamsport, partner up with the Little League World Series. One of the things that, when I look at the NHL, which is, out of the big four in the United States, kind of has like the least amount of popularity or support. I played hockey my entire life, so I'm a little biased. But so I look at the Winter Classic. I look at the Outdoor Stadium Series. I look at the Lake Tahoe games. Yeah, they've all kind of had some issues, usually around weather. but they're so much fun, and it brings so much attention to the game. And I really look at baseball as the only other sport that can really do that. So, I really think, I love that idea. Like, let's go to unique destinations and let's, celebrate the game of baseball.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think the one thing with Omaha is that there is a minor league team there. And I'm not so sure what goes on during the middle of the season. Maybe they still have games. I would love, personally, for it to be in Omaha. I think they, at some point or another, they were thinking about moving the draft to Omaha, I think. So I think I agree, that would definitely be an interesting landmark. Or maybe even Louisville. I mean, they have Louisville Slugger. Maybe they could do a game there. I know there's a minor league team there. But like there are a few different places where I would like to see baseball games get played eventually.
You could do a Cooperstown game.
Yeah, Cooperstown. Yeah, there's not really a stadium there though.
Yeah.
They have like a summer league team there.
If you build it, they will come.
Well, that's right. That's right. And what I was going to say too, I know we've said about getting political, but if they hadn't moved it and they left it where it was, then what? And it's kind of like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. So if they don't move it and they keep it in Atlanta and they let the festivities run, then what happens? Right? A bunch of the players don't show up. I mean, players have not shown up to NHL All-Star games before due to injuries, due to whatever, but never for political reasons, right? So that's the other thing I was thinking too, is just like, well, if they didn't move it, then they can't win.
Well,
I don't know. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. That's just a thought that I had.
And that's just it. Like, you were playing with fire in either direction.
Yep.
So for me, it's it's going to be bad regardless. But if at least MLB and the MLBPA are kind of on the same side, then like to me that looks like it's the slightly lesser of two evils. Where it's like, okay, like at least they're agreeing, so maybe we can keep this momentum going in the off season.
The real concern is the CBA.
Yep.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
With that coming up at the end of the year, which we don't know what's going to happen with that, because given everything that's going on with the whole COVID issue and how that was handled, and we don't know. I'm not going to jinx anything, so we'll just leave it like that. So, but it's interesting how Major League Baseball kind of jumped in and said this is what's going to happen, and they were really quick to put Colorado as the site of the All-Star game, which I know that Colorado had put in a bid to host it in future years down the road. But I'm surprised that they just didn't, with the World Series being in Arlington, that they didn't come back and host the All-Star game as well. So, but yeah, that's where it's headed. It's headed to Colorado. It's still going to be fun no matter what, like you guys said. It's always fun. The home run derby should be electric, especially being up there in the altitude. So, but we'll be having an All-Star game. It'll be fun. The draft will probably still taking place during that time as well. Something new that Major League Baseball is trying to incorporate too. So it'll be exciting. But we'll kind of keep moving on here. And one of the things that kind of just stirred up just a couple of days ago was the Cincinnati Reds outfielder Nick Castellanos. He kind of got into a little, not want to say scuffle, but definitely wanting to show his dominance, and some things kind of transpired. And I'm going to go ahead and play. I've got a little clip I'm going to play first, and then I'm going to get your guys' opinion on it.
Shows and their hot dogs and the Cracker Jack, and there's batting cages set up in the concourse.
I know it.
I'm thinking, holy smokes, Castellano is hit by the pitch. That ball gets away, play at the plate, and safe at the plate. And Castellano words with Jake Woodford. And here we go.
Okay. So, as we all saw, and for those that are watching or listening at home, so the Cardinals pitcher went and he hit Nick Castellanos, and Castellanos did not like that. And when he came around to score, asserted his dominance, kind of got up in Woodward's face, and then the benches started to clear after that. So, Mac, I'm going to jump to you first. Do you think that was an intentional hit by Woodward?
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, it was 6-2 by that point. I'm not going to say that was really intentional. I mean, it wasn't like it was like a high 90s fastball or anything. But, I understand, it's not comfortable to get hit by a pitch. And I understand if Castellanos was upset. So I see why he decided to, show him up a little bit when he slid into home. But I can't really tell there if that was intentional.
Yeah, because it looked like he was having some control issues, especially with that last pitch on that wild pitch when Castellanos came home. It just seemed like it just got away from him. And of course, I mean, a lot of players will assume that that it was intentional just based on the reaction. But Ben, what do you think? Do you think the ball got away from him, or does it look like it was intentional?
I don't see it as being intentional. I mean, I didn't see the whole game. I saw the highlights. So maybe it's harder to judge when you don't see it in the flow of the game and you take that section out and you look at that. But I know we chatted about this too. And I know Mac and I talked about it too, that expression of emotion subsequently, it's a bit of an asserting the dominance, but it's not like he's right in the guy's face. And I think Mac mentioned it as well. It's actually Yadier Molina who takes exception, and makes the aggressive moves after that as the catcher. And I'm like, okay, well, I know he got a 2-game suspension, but the catcher Molina sort of gets in there too. And you're like, well, that's almost like in the NHL. It's like an instigator, right? Like you see the original interaction and then you see the catcher do that and you go, I'm not saying I'd suspend him. I see other events in reaction to what was done. I see a sort of like, okay, well, here it comes, and then this, and then okay. Then there's sort of like more, and then it turns into a melee, right? Where it's just a bench clearing ball and guys coming in out of the outfield, and you're like, oh, here we go.
What do you think, Steven?
Yeah, so for me, I watched this play and thought, you know what? Nothing that transpired on the field was bad. This is exactly how it's supposed to go. It's supposed, like, we want people to feel so slighted that they're getting angry and they're going to play out of their minds. Like, I watched it. I loved it. I thought the 2-game suspension was silly. I didn't think it was necessary. I don't think he hit him on purpose. No. I don't have any issue with what Castellanos did. I don't have any issue with what Yadier Molina did. And in terms of, the bench is cleared, the bullpen's emptied. There was pushing and shoving. Like, this wasn't, Amir Garrett running it, the Pittsburgh Pirates entire bench and just like throwing haymakers. No, like this was, this was pushing and shoving. This was the heat of the moment. But, I look at it as, this is what baseball is. Let the game police itself. Yeah, you know what? Castellanos will probably get hit by a pitch at some point against the Cardinals sooner than later. That's just kind of the nature of the game. Yeah. And, if we're so upset about, I always try and think, if I was the pitcher, I'm significantly more upset with me, one, hitting him and giving him a free base and throwing a wild pitch, allowing him to score. That's on me. That's not on Castellanos. If I want to, if I don't, want to have somebody, quote unquote, assert their dominance at, me at home plate, well, don't put myself in the situation to have that happen. Be better.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's a good point. And, I don't think Castellanos, from what I saw in that clip before that, does anything. I mean, he could have said something to the pitcher after he hit him, right? And he just kind of went, okay.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steven.
No, I was just gonna say, for me, it was, every single person, their actions I thought were justified. I don't think the pitcher hit him on purpose, but you know what? I got hit by a lot of pitches playing baseball, and none of the pitches that hit me were anywhere near the speed that Castellanos was hit. So yeah, I would be mad. He scores, your adrenaline's going, so you get up and you're gonna shout, and yeah, you know what? You're feeling good, so you're gonna, kind of show off a little bit. If you're Yachty, you're gonna protect your pitcher. I love that. Get in there, stand up for your guy, and then if you're the rest of the team, I love it. I think that, the bigger concern is when you start having a situation like that and your teammates don't support you. So for me, no, this was fun.
No, that's exactly right. And that's kind of one of the things I was going to touch on was the fact that, Yachty jumped in there to protect his pitcher because, I mean, he is a young pitcher but also too, it's kind of that veteran that Yachty is that, he's going to show you that he's got your back. And he jumped in there and he managed to, they kind of held everybody back. But the suspension thing kind of just came out of nowhere because it didn't seem like it was, like you guys said, it wasn't something that warranted a suspension to begin with. There was no punches thrown. I mean, no kicking or anything like that or whatever. No Yasiel Puig came in and cold cocked anybody. I mean, he's not with the team anymore. So or
Ricky,
or Rufy Odor as well. I mean, but it wasn't to that extent. And it's the first week of the season. These guys are intense. These guys are amped up.
Totally.
They haven't been around fans since 2019, and so I get it. Emotions are high, but if he wants to celebrate and be excited that his team scored, hey, by all means. But I think Major League Baseball kind of just jumped the gun and kind of just assumed that a suspension was needed. But hopefully, I think he's going to appeal it actually, and
that's right. Yeah, that's what I read. Actually.
Yeah, the other thing I was going to say though is that he got suspended 2 games for showing emotion, but nobody else in that scuffle even got fined. Like,
right?
But he showed emotion. Like he was excited that he scored. I mean, I didn't really see the pitcher say anything. Maybe he was a little upset, but Yachty kind of escalated that. I don't think that was intended to, escalate into the benches clearing. Obviously, it wasn't like a real fracas or anything. I know the 2 teams have fought before. I think it was in 2010 when Brandon Phillips and Yachty Molina got into it, and that actually turned into a ridiculous brawl, which one of the players on the Cardinals, his career ended after that brawl. But I don't think, I'm going to agree with you guys. I don't think that suspension was warranted at all. I think it's honestly kind of sad that that's the case now. You show emotion. You see Tim Anderson a few years ago, I'm pretty sure he got suspended for doing a bat flip. Like, I don't get why this is the case now. Like, this whole let the kids play, idea is really just going out the window because, you show a little bit of emotion, you get fined, you get suspended all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Well, and now the issue that you run into is the game will still police itself, but now, so like if you're Castellanos, you kind of know you have payback coming. Like it's just you're like, okay, I know what I did, it was worth it, but I'm gonna get hit at some point. Where now, so he's gonna be sitting there. Okay, so now I was suspended 2 games. Well, that's the retribution. That's the payback. So now if I get hit, well, now we're actually down 1. And now you're going to create a problem and allow it to continue. Where instead, let them settle it on the field. As long as nobody's doing, like a complete cheap shot, 99, like in the head region, the game polices itself and people will be fine.
One of the things I noticed in that video was the pitcher Woodward. It looked like he was about to get back up and start walking back towards the mound. So he looked like he was kind of okay. He got excited. He got pumped. Let's go back to playing baseball. And then, of course, the instigation by Yachty. But that's kind of where it looked like it was headed. And then all of a sudden, a complete 180 had taken place. So, but yeah, I don't think a suspension was needed. I think he'll probably appeal it, and maybe he can win the appeal, or they'll settle on 1 game, maybe 1 game. He just gets a day off. So, but okay, we'll kind of keep an eye on that to see how that kind of starts to take place. But one of the things I kind of want to touch on here, because it seems like this guy is always in the news, whether it's through his social media accounts or whether he's doctoring baseballs now. Is Trevor Bauer. We don't know that for sure. That's just speculation on my part there. But word is coming out. There's an article that was written by Ken Rosenthal that's saying that Trevor Bauer is being investigated for possibly using substances on the baseballs. So, Ben, I'm going to get your take on this first. Bauer kind of started to come into his own back in last season, where of course he won the Cy Young. But he kind of had a kind of ebb and flow type career. some good numbers back in, I believe, in 2018, where he had that 2.19 ERA or something like that. It was a really good ERA in the twos, and that's where he kind of started to kind of come back into his kind of mold a little bit. But what do you think? What are your thoughts on this? Do you think it's we've heard pitchers using foreign substances before on baseballs, where they put it on the arms, the wrist, inside the glove, or whatever. Given the resurgence of Bauer and where his career is kind of taken off, do you think he's possibly using something that might kind of aid him in his pitching?
It's a good question, and I know I mentioned this to you guys earlier. This whole thing about the ex-Angels staffer who came out with those allegations, and it linked to pitchers like Dylan Bundy after he was moved from the Orioles to the Angels, Garrett Cole, Bauer was another. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, the actual case that went to court was thrown out by this former employee, and he got let go, right? And so there's a whole list of things when you read about that decision and you read about the circumstances around who the supposed players were and what he was supplying. It's really tough to make a call until they actually prove it.
Right.
We also saw Ken Rosenthal's article on Twitter once it was released, how Bauer's agent, Rachel Lubra, responded to it saying, well, thanks for making something out of a non-story. So you see that and you go, okay. But, it's come up a few times now. I know we talked about it was all related to spin rate of Bauer, right, and particularly the shortened season last season, the kind of season that he had with the Reds. And then obviously all the off-season fanfare and the hoopla about him going to the Dodgers and signing and the contract. And, what that said, having him being brought in. And, I just hearken back to that old thing that maybe he's innocent until proven guilty, whether you like it or not. Because
right.
That's social media these days, right? People are convicted. And it's like, and there's that word in there, supposed, alleged, right? So, but having done some of the background on the story, knowing about some of the other pitchers, you do have to wonder.
Right.
Right. So I don't know if he's doing it or not. I mean, how would you ever prove it? I mean, they've taken a sample of baseballs. Apparently they've taken the baseballs. So what are they going to find?
Yeah, I don't know. It's
it's again like we talked about with Castellanos. Like, you give him a 2-game suspension. This is a thing they're going to focus on, trying to catch guys putting foreign substances on balls, right? So he's been suspected, but I still remember a thing I found online about Gaylord Perry. You want to talk about a guy who was accused of being a famous spitballer, right? And they outlawed the spitball, right? And spitball pitchers, and I can't remember I told you guys about the Bill James historical abstract about when they stopped allowing pitchers to do spitballs, right? Well, Perry was accused of, was he with the Mariners in the 70s? I think so, towards the end of his career, of loading up balls with all kinds of stuff. They never proved it. So I don't know. I mean, is this the next wave of guys who are doing it? How do you prove it?
Exactly.
Well, so
right. I mean,
I remember watching, Yankee games growing up. So like one of the guys is one of the Yankee announcers at this point is, former big league pitcher David Cohn. Just wrote a book a couple of years ago with Jack Curry, about being a pitcher. And, one of the things he mentioned, and this was before the book, but he had a very interesting thing where he said that he never would put a cut in a baseball. That wasn't him. He wasn't gonna mess with the baseball. But if he got a baseball back and already had a cut in it, he knew exactly what to do with it.
Right.
So, this is, and to me, to be honest, that's fair game. I'm not gonna expect every pitcher that has a little extra mark in a ball after it got hit and then, tossed around, the horn and then back to the pitcher to just toss it out. But, so when I look at, what exactly do we need to be focusing on? For me, it's not necessarily, are people doing it? It's, are they intentionally changing it? And that's
what the issue is, yeah.
And that's where it seems, the crux of the issue for Bauer is. And, to me, what's a little concerning about, the story is, one is the news source. So this coming from The Athletic to me already holds a little bit more weight. We see a lot of, bad baseball tabloids. If you ever want to, go for laughs, just read any of the New York baseball tabloids. They're absolutely awful. There's just nonsense. No idea what's going on.
I can second that statement.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm from New York, so I see a lot of that.
Yeah, it's brutal. But, when I look at The Athletic, I look at Ken Rosenthal. All of a sudden, this has a little bit more weight behind it. This isn't just like a guy that's going for clicks. This is, maybe outside of Buster Olney, this is one of the, most respected guys in the industry. And he's loved, not only by fans, which it's interesting because I'm actually not the biggest Ken Rosenthal fan, because just bow ties, it's a little too much at times. But both him and like Tim Kirkjian are loved by the players. So for me, like there's now all of a sudden a little bit more weight there that this is coming from him. And then just, when I was reading the article, it's not just one baseball. They collected a lot of baseballs, that they're looking and saying like there's potential inconsistencies on enough here that this is going to be a little bit bigger for me than, just, this guy, found a baseball with a cut in it. Mm. And then, I remember I was on a different podcast, and it's actually a mutual friend with that Rip and I have, saying that he had heard from like a source. Now, I don't want to say anybody's names, but that Trevor Bauer has throughout his career always experimented with doing different things to baseballs as well as to his fingers to give him a different kind of spin rate. And one of the things that he mentioned that for me really kind of stuck with me is that he would cut the tips of his fingers in such a way to allow him to do something a little different. And then again, being a Yankee fan, this instantly transported me back a few years ago when it was Yankees versus Cleveland in the playoffs. Trevor Bauer is expected to pitch, and the day of the game, he badly cuts his finger on a drone. And I remember at the time thinking like, well, that's just like kind of like irresponsible, but he's a young kid. He probably shouldn't have been playing with his drone before a playoff game, but who knows? Where now I kind of always think back to that story, and now there's a doubt there. Is there something more there? Was he maybe not messing with a drone, but doing something else and hurt himself? So for me, it's hearing all of these stories in the past. And now here we are in the present, and it's Major League Baseball has confiscated multiple baseballs for review. Now all of a sudden it's, I'll be the person that, you're definitely innocent until proven guilty. This is a bad look. Like there's more there than, if they picked on, I'm just trying to think of like any just like normal pitcher throughout. If they said like Steven Strasburg, there was some inconsistencies with his baseballs, I would kind of think, okay, like I've never heard of an issue with Steven Strasburg before, besides that he can't stay healthy. So I'm not necessarily thinking that there's something there, but this is almost more to me, hearing that like A-Rod has another steroid tied to somebody from like the early 2000s. And it's like, yeah, like I'm not surprised. Like there's, I don't know if it's true or not, but this smoke seems like a little bit more legitimate.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I'll weigh in here, which is that Trevor Bauer was very outspoken about the Astros scandal. Like he was tweeting about it nonstop. He would not stop talking about it, talking smack to the Astros players. And then, this comes out, and honestly, I'm not that surprised, if I'm being honest. I mean, Trevor Bauer is definitely not the only person who's been trying to do this. I mean, it's the same thing with the Astros scandal. The Astros were definitely not the only team that was stealing signs. It's just so happened that they were very good at it and that they got caught. Bauer has seen his spin rate go up significantly. His numbers have improved very well. He got a whole lot of money for that great season he had last year, and he's only really had one great season in the past, which was 2018. You said he had about a 2.2 ERA. Yeah, he had a great strikeout rate that year. I remember, and I remember when he cut his finger. It was actually the 2016 playoffs against the Blue Jays. I remember. I get it. Bauer, he was playing with his drone. I mean, he was a physics major at UCLA. Like he loves that stuff. But at the same time, I think with this whole doctoring the ball thing, I feel like, because Steven, I mean, you said it perfectly. I mean, because he's such a big name, like this is gonna get a lot of attention. I mean, I think that I don't know what a potential consequence could be, but I think that now MLB might be starting to pay more attention to what the ball looks like. And I mean, I've heard the name. Yeah, I've heard Garrett Cole get linked to this. I'm sure. Heck, I mean, I bet so many players in the league are doing this. Same with steroids back in the 2000s. Like I bet a lot of people are doing it, but the people who will get the most attention from what they do is going to be the biggest stars. So I'm sure, Bauer, Cole, I'm sure if DeGrom was doing it, like people would know, like that's what's going to come down to it.
Well, and it's, so for me, and, I mean, you definitely hit the nail right on the head, and kind of going off where you said, well, like he got this big contract. And for me, that's just it. So, one guy that I love to point out, so he was the former CEO of like the big investment bank, Merrill Lynch. This was a bank that they held a lot of money for a lot of, very, very rich, it's the 1%, that's definitely this bank. During the like the 2007, 2008, housing crisis, Merrill Lynch was involved in a lot of very just risky maneuvers, for not to get into too many details, that helped to lead to this financial crisis. Well, the one guy I love to pick on is their former CEO, Stanley O'Neill. So Stanley O'Neill, you sit here thinking, okay, he caused, partially, there was a lot of people at fault, but, he was one of the main guys that led to the downfall of Merrill Lynch, ended up being bought out by Bank of America. That led to 2007, 2008 market crash, which, we're still seeing ramifications of that today. And we probably, the American economy, the world economy will always have been impacted by that event. His severance package when he left was over $161.5 million.
Golly.
So all of a sudden, was it worth it? Well, yeah, like it did a really bad thing, but, well, I made a ton of money.
Yeah.
Trevor Bauer, and again, like, let's not, say that what Trevor Bauer is doing is anywhere near as bad or that he's even guilty, because we really don't know at this point. How much is he getting this year again?
45.
If he has 40. Another amazing year, and, I think it was like a 2-year deal.
It was a 3-year deal, and I'm pretty sure it was like $40 million the first year, $45 million the second year.
Right. Like all of a sudden, well, it's quote unquote worth it. Paid off. And look at like so many players that, got taken down for steroids. Right. And then signed a big contract. All of a sudden, it's worth it.
Yeah, and he's not even your number one starter. And he's making $40 million a year, which he seems to be okay with. I mean, the one good season that he had, like we mentioned, was 2018. But other than that, he's not worth the contract, in my opinion. He's
career 3.9 ERA coming into this year. And
right.
Also last year we had to take with a bit of a grain of salt. Look, he had a fantastic season, but it was a 60-game season. He made 12 starts. He wins the Cy Young, great. But, I thought – and also he was facing the Central divisions, which were very weak offensively. So
this is true, yeah.
I think just
he won 1 and 2 against teams that made the playoffs last year.
Yeah, I thought he was ridiculously overpaid. And now this whole thing, I have no clue what's going to come from this.
So just maybe the hypothetical, if say this does come out and there is evidence that he was doctoring balls, obviously he's probably going to face a suspension at some point, but that kind of gives a black eye to the Dodgers now because they just went out and spent all this money on this guy who's doctoring baseballs to get better. It definitely makes them look like, I don't want to say foolish, but that they just threw money at something hoping that it was legit, and it could possibly backfire on them. Of course, they're the Dodgers. They've got the money, so it doesn't really, to them, it might be more of a PR type of situation where they have to try to, remedy that to kind of whatever backlash this might bring. But, one good season, gets $40 million and now is being investigated for possibly doctoring baseballs. A lot's happened with Trevor Bauer over since the end of last season. maybe he's gonna try to kick off his momentum brand a little bit more. So, but that's kind of one of the big things that kind of just transpired just today, actually, just before we came on the podcast tonight. So, we'll kind of keep abreast on that and see how that kind of starts to unfold. I'm sure we will definitely be hearing more of that in the coming days. But that's kind of what I've got for the news right now, other than baseball kicking off and everything, which has been great the last opening week. So just wrap up this last segment of the show. And Mac, you're a big Mets fan, right?
Correct.
So there was a little bit of controversy after today's game, and who were the Mets playing?
Miami.
The Marlins, yeah.
Okay. So there's a little controversy at the end of the game where a walk-off happened, but not in the most conventional way that we've seen a walk-off. So I've got a little clip here. We'll kind of play so we kind of find out.
1-2 coming. And the slider in there, strike three. Hit on the pitch. Through the strike zone. It hit Conforto. He made no effort to get out of the way. It was a strike, but he didn't move. And Don Mattingly is going to come out and argue the call with the home plate umpire, Ron Culpa.
The ball hit him, and it was going to be a strike. Yep.
So the Mets are celebrating. The Marlins are arguing. And unless this is overruled, the Mets have themselves a 3-2 win as Conforto is nicked by a pitch. Now, by rule, you have to make an effort to get out of the way. And that's what the Marlins.
Okay, boy, that's one way to end the game right there. So, Mac, let me ask you this: did it hit him?
That's the thing, is that's not the question here. It's not did it hit him. I mean, here's the thing with the whole situation. All right, so the Mets were in a funk coming into this game. They left 14 men on base on Wednesday afternoon against the Phillies. They lose 8-2. They lost the opener because their bullpen blew it. I mean, they needed to win any way they could get it. And in the ninth, heading into the ninth inning, it was the same old story. They weren't getting runs in. They had one opportunity. They scored one run with the bases loaded and one out. They needed any break they could get. And I mean, look, they that ninth inning, they were finally showing signs of life. Jeff McNeil, who had been hitless, cracked a home run to tie the game to start the inning, and then they get the bases loaded. I mean, the thing is that in that situation, it's bases loaded, one out. You need one run to win the game. And I remember when I was in Little League, when I would go to baseball camp, in that situation, we were always told, when you come up, bases loaded, one out, you're going to want to come unglued, but don't. You got to stay in the zone. And if a pitch comes inside, you wear it. And Michael Conforto did that. The one thing is that the pitch was in the strike zone. I've never seen something like this happen, especially to end the game. I mean, the pitch was a perfect pitch by Anthony Bass. It was a slider on the inside corner. It locked him up, but he just happened to stick his elbow out and it hit him. I mean, players have done this all the time. I mean, players try to get hit. I remember Jose Tabata did it to break up Max Scherzer's perfect game with 2 outs in the ninth. It just so happens that this was it was a walk-off. And, people got to realize, though, that Anthony Bass got himself into that mess. He allowed the leadoff homer. He allowed a single, a double, and then intentionally walked Lindor. And even if, say, Conforto does get called out, all right, great. That's not the end of the inning. That's 2 outs. You still have to face Pete Alonso with the bases loaded. I think, also the Mets have been on the losing end of these type of situations so many times that it's like, well, they finally get one to bounce their way. It's just the most ridiculous way I've probably ever seen.
It was definitely interesting. Ben, what do you think? Do you think it was did it hit him, or did it look like
No, it's a tough call. I've been watching that. I've been trying to see it, and I'm not as up on it as Mac is. And
well, also the thing was that it's not a call you can challenge. You can challenge to see whether it hit him or not.
Yeah.
But you can't challenge to see if he actually intended on getting in the way. Which
how would you ever know? Like unless you reviewed it, so they can't review it on your feet. Right?
Yeah, so, and also it's that the home plate umpire Ron Culpa, he ruled that it was a hit by pitch, and then they convened and they still ruled it a hit by pitch. And then in the post game interview, he admitted that he should have called it a strike. So he knows he messed up.
Wow.
And this is a guy who does not have a good reputation as an umpire. So that's all you need to know about him.
Well, you know umpires better than we do, so I don't know if we're going to get into the Angel Hernandez thing with Houston and the Angels. That's another. I watched that game and I didn't see what you saw, Mac.
That was bad.
So Culpa, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure he's pretty loved in Houston as the guy that like a couple years ago just kept staring down AJ Hinch until Hinch was like, "Can you go call the game?" And then he tossed Hinch for talking back. Like that's this guy. Like this guy is like such like an egomaniac. And you start looking and it's like, all right, how does this guy like get to be this way? And then you see the crew chief is Joe West. And it's like, this makes sense.
I also remember this is the guy who I think it was Big Poppy's last season, and he made 2 horrible calls in a row, and he threw out Big Poppy like it with the bases loaded the 9th inning. And I just remember Big Poppy lost it on him, and it's like, well, if you got Big Poppy to turn on you like that, like that's one of the nicest guys in the game.
Yeah,
you probably aren't good at your job.
Well, so when I look at this situation, though, I think Rip will agree with me here that what Michael Conforto did was way worse than the Houston Astros scandal. It was way worse than the Yankees scandals of steroids. It's worse than Pete Rose. It's worse than the Black Sox. This is the end all be all worst thing to ever happen in a professional. I can't get through that with a straight face. No, I mean, for me, it's not Conforto's job to call the game correctly.
Right.
It's not on any player. This, did he do the right thing there? No. I'm going to go back that the game's going to police itself. He's going to get hit some point against Miami. It's just going to happen. Right. And to be honest, if I'm him, I just put my head down and I go to first base. I deserve that one. But, it's not the players' jobs to call the game. This would be the equivalent of, there's a bang play at first. It's going to be too close for replay to overturn it, but that the ball beat you. And turning around telling the umpire, no, I'm out. I know I'm out. The ball beat me. No, nobody's doing that. It's not Conforto's job to be the umpire here. And that's, for me, there's too many issues every single year, every single game with Major League Baseball's umpires that, we probably need to expand replay because it's miserable watching this in high def 4K. You just clearly missed the call. But 2, you look at, all of this is a week after the Angel Hernandez lawsuit gets tossed out because he was actually just a bad umpire this whole time and it wasn't racial discrimination.
No, not at all. No,
and,
that guy...
when we're having federal U.S. courts ruling, no, this guy actually just sucks. You know what? Maybe we need a little bit of an overhaul here.
Oh man,
maybe a new commissioner.
Yeah.
Oh boy, don't get us started.
I had a T-shirt made, and I'm not wearing it tonight, but it says #Theo for commissioner.
Oh,
I really
Theo Epstein.
I really think Theo Epstein is going to be the next commissioner.
Sure seems it.
Interesting.
He wants the job. That's why he's there working in the front office of Major League Baseball. So I think he wants it. I think he'll be there soon. But one of those things, going back to the hit by pitch from Conforto, growing up, especially in Little League, you were taught that if it looks like it grazed you, act like you got hit. Yeah, it was like, it may have brushed your jersey, but you know what? He got me. Or the fingers. The fingers was always the good telltale sign that you probably got hit. Was you could play that off like nothing else. And looks like that's what he did. Was I'm going Little League, and I got hit in the elbow. Game over. Mets win.
It's not my job to make the call.
Exactly.
It comes back to our question we've been dealing with throughout the show. Did he cheat?
Yes.
Right?
I can't say that.
We've been talking about doctoring balls and cheating. We've been talking about sign stealing. So is that another way to win a game or affect the outcome of the game by doing what he did?
I would argue, by definition, yes, it is cheating.
Right? Like it could, because we're talking about, I mean, we seem to have this cheating theme running through the show, which I think is really interesting.
For me, it's not outside of the bounds of baseball. Like that
No,
to
I don't
me
think it
is
is at
like,
all.
yeah, like technically, it's cheating that, you did something you weren't technically supposed to do. It's again, though, it's not his job to call it. So,
Right.
the way that I see it is, we have 4 umpires that are paid amazing salaries to, be a Major League Baseball umpire. This is, for a lot of them, this is their job, where, it's up to them to make the calls. And, anything that happens, over the course of the game, they're supposed to be getting it right. And that's why they're there. And it's just unfortunate that, he missed the call.
Yeah, and Steven, you mentioned it earlier, but everyone is saying that Conforto will probably get drilled next game. I honestly, Conforto also was in a horrible slump leading into that plate appearance. So people are wondering, like, maybe this will be the break that gets him going. I mean, he's looked downright dreadful these first few games, but yeah, he probably will get drilled. We're all just wondering, Jacob deGrom is starting on Saturday, which is the next game, and I don't know if you want to piss off Jacob deGrom necessarily. So, yeah, it's gonna get it's gonna get heated. I don't know if this will cause like the benches to clear or anything. That would be something. But I mean, there was just so much wrong with that play. I mean, any good umpire would say that Conforto was out. I'm sure Conforto knows himself that was something that, any normal circumstance, he is out. Like that's a strikeout. But at this point, Don Mattingly said that they tried reaching out to the league office and they have no grounds to protest the game, which is hard to believe, but you can't actually prove Conforto's intent. So they're gonna have to move on. They're 1-6 now. It's a new game on Saturday, so that's where this situation is gonna end.
Well, and I look at it too, you could almost even argue that it's not the home plate umpire's job to determine if the guy was leaning over the strike zone or not. Like, I'm almost okay, like, having the mindset that if I'm the home plate umpire, my job is to call, did it hit him, yes or no? I have 3 other umpires with a much better view of, home plate, and if somebody stuck their arm out.
Right.
So I kind of look at that and say, ideally he would have just said, like, no, you stick your arm over the plate, which I think would have technically been a dead ball, not actually a strikeout in this case. But you had 3 other umpires there that are supposed to be helping you, that are supposed to be supporting you. And to me, that's where the failure mainly lies. Because again, for me, home plate umpires should mainly be calling, did it hit, yes or no? And then, okay, these other umpires can then make the call. Like, I almost look at it, it's like the equivalent of, did a guy check his swing?
Right.
Like, if it's a close pitch, I want the umpire focused more on, did this ball get the strike zone or not? And if the guy might have gone, might have not, well, I've got 2 other umpires that can help make that call.
That's a great point. It's, I almost think that, the guy behind the plate needs to be calling balls and strikes, needs to be focusing on that part, and, use the other part of the other people in the crew to make other calls. I think that's what they need to do. And instead of they're putting too much on one person to kind of control what happens behind the plate. So, but yeah, it was just an interesting call to finish the game. And, I'm thankful that Mac was coming on tonight to talk the Mets, and it just worked out perfectly to where we can discuss that, because it's always interesting, how players try to gain the edge and of trying to win and win at all costs, and score runs and all that good stuff. So, but kind of just real quick, just kind of wrap up the show. Is there anything that happened on opening day or through this opening week that you kind of that caught your eye, that was kind of fun or appealing? I'll kind of just shoot it out there. Ben, you want to go first if you have anything?
Yeah, really interesting, odd thing following and writing on the Angels, but as I mentioned to you guys, following baseball. For whatever reason, just getting 2 back-to-back series of the Chicago White Sox. So 4 Angels games, and then because I follow Seattle, the Mariners are my closest MLB team. Just to watch that White Sox team, and having never really followed them, and even what they did last year, and then the offseason stuff, they let Renteria go. They got Tony La Russa. Just to watch those players, particularly Jose Barreju, just to watch that guy, I was like, wow, like just that whole team. And I did the piece on the Player of the Week for Overtime Heroics as well. But to watch that White Sox team, it was really interesting. Never really having actually watched them or followed them, and it's because I'm following the other two teams they're playing. The Mariners and the Angels. Just to watch the White Sox, I was like, that's a really good baseball team.
Yeah, that was great to watch. That Mac, is there anything that caught your eye this weekend?
There were obviously there were a number of interesting things. Sort of sticking with the White Sox. Yeah, I think his name is pronounced Yerman Mercedes. He's off to a rip-roaring start. He hit one about I think he hit the longest home run of the year thus far. This evening, he hit one 485 against the Royals. Absolute moonshot. The other team that's caught my eye is the Reds. The Reds, the NL Central is very weak, but the Reds have come out swinging. I don't know if it's just that they were facing the Pirates this week, but they scored 14 on Tuesday night and then followed up with an 11 spot yesterday. They have come out of the gate swinging. Obviously early in the season, I mean, look, the Phillies have won 5 of 6. Meanwhile, the A's have lost 6 of their first 7, and they're down 6-0 tonight. So, there's going to be hot starts. There's going to be cold starts. The Mets lost 2 of 3. The Braves lost their first 4. There's been a lot of ups and downs early in the season, but I think as we get towards the middle of April, I think the standings are going to start taking shape. Obviously, it's a long season, but I can't wait to see how the rest of the season develops.
It's gonna be fun. Steven, how's your team doing?
Yeah. They're doing all right. Judge, it looks like he has an oblique injury, so we got 5 games in before the first big injury, so that was pretty that was pretty cool. No, for me, I've got maybe about 3 things that have really stood out to me so far this year. I'm gonna stick with the White Sox. I thought the memorial and the tributes that they did to Eloy Jimenez after he apparently died in the outfield was just really nice, really respectful. Everybody signed the jersey and dedicated the win to him. He's fine. He's going to play this year, so I don't know why they made it so weird, but I thought it was interesting. The one that Mac touched, Phillies, I kind of picked them as my sleeper team. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago when I was on the show? Girardi's got a bullpen, and Girardi's a heck of a manager. That the Phillies are going to be a problem this year. And, finally, fascinating story is the Chicago Cubs at 4-3. I saw a statistic earlier this morning that their batting average of all of their non-pitchers is lower than all of the pitcher batting averages in the rest of the NL. Wow. That's going to be something to watch because there are a lot of really good players on that team. And if they do not figure out how to apparently just start getting hits, as hard to believe it is to say that, we're going to have some really interesting names pop up at the trade deadline.
It'd be definitely interesting to see how everything transpires. One of the things that's interesting is the Orioles are in first place right now.
Yep.
4-3. That's impressive.
They were winning in the 5th inning today. They were into the 6th, and then a guy named Armstrong, whose arm is unfortunately not strong, kind of blew the game for them.
Hey, Matt Harvey started today. Harvey, it's kind of 50 for some reason. It's kind of 50-50 with Mets fans, but Matt Harvey's a guy I will always root for. So I'm very happy that he's on a major league roster right now. Right. I hope he at least has a sort of respectable season.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think we'll see some good things coming out of the Orioles and have all the teams. It's definitely exciting to see a lot of these teams that we didn't think would jump out of the gate so hot that they are, like the Orioles. But it's going to be exciting. I'm glad we got baseball going. The Astros are going right now. We've got some other teams in action as well. So a lot of good things. It's going to be a great weekend and, of course, a great season of baseball as well. But that's pretty much all I got for tonight's episode, guys. I truly appreciate you guys coming on the show and talking baseball and kind of getting into a little bit of a debate, which has been great. So real quick, I'll go ahead and give you guys a plug. Mac, where can we find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Matthias_A_K.
And Steven, you are at...
Yep, I am at SLEONARDI11, or you can find me at MLBFA01 for the Major League Baseball Fan Association.
And Ben, where can we find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at Lebaneb, LEBANEB, which is basically Ben Abel spelled backwards. That's my Twitter handle. I've seen some retweets and mentions today about the podcast and having me on, so thanks. I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate you guys coming on.
It's been fun talking to you guys.
And we'll definitely have to do this again soon. But
thank you.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Please remember to subscribe to the show on all the major podcast platforms, Apple, Google, or Spotify. If you have a question about your favorite team, you can drop me a voicemail. The number is 210-263-3253. So that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of The Rip Griffin Show. Make sure to subscribe to the show on all the major podcast platforms. Follow Rip on Twitter at RipGriffin2.